Hello everyone, Anthony here of The Bloody Point. Today is the first video in a series of construction-based videos demonstrating a concept I am dubbing the onion base, to demonstrate that you can make a small, compact, secure base for use in frontline operations, given, as I previously mentioned in an earlier video, that the redeploy zone in some instances is smaller. You can build the base closer to the point. So this uses the rebirthing center as the core for the base, and operates using the concept of alignment. So as you can see here, I'm going to apply the wide bulwark wall and a specific alignment to the core rebirthing center, using indicators on the surface geometry and the textures to get positioning right. It's not precise. It depends on how well you're able to position things based on the environment and your rotation, but as you'll see, the basic idea is for it to be reproducible and somewhat uniform, so that every time you build it, it's exactly the same, which ensures that you have a tight, cohesive wall structure, and these assets do it pretty well. The rebirthing center is bisymmetrical, so you do have symmetry there that you can work with to make sure things are appropriately aligned. And the other element of this is that when you use these assets and you install the fortress module in the rebirthing center's module slot, you can get some instant security, as the bubble does cover the entirety of the core wall layer, which you'll see shortly. So as you can see, I'm using the terminal icons and the module icons to make sure the alignment is pretty much precise. And the result, as you can see, is that when the fortress module is activated, you will have coverage of all of the primary assets. Now the silo placement can vary. Obviously you can orient it in multiple different ways. In fact, there are 6 different options here. Stairs facing outward, facing north, facing south, and then on the opposite side the same thing. What you do depends on how you plan to build out the sides. There are multiple options from this point, but the basic concept is to have these 3 assets, the rebirthing center and the 2 wide bulwark walls, positioned thusly, which grants you the important element of, when you put the fortress module in, it covers those assets. The fortress module, in a worst case scenario, if all you're doing is just continually reslotting the fortress module, you will ensure survivability of the core. If you have a 2-man operation, you can have one person doing that and the other person is handling security versus infantry. It's very manageable. One thing I should mention is, because the silo is placed after 3 other assets have been placed, the existing assets will take damage. You're going to have to repair them manually, or slot regular repair modules or heavy repair modules to top those up. The time this takes is, as you can see, a bit long. If you're doing this under fire, if you're right on the front line, it may be problematic if you're doing it alone. So balance yourself accordingly. In this particular case, it's the end of the alert. I'm in a very flat open area for testing purposes, and it's not a problem. So as you can see, there are some slight elements of the walls on one side which pop out, which would be vulnerable, but in a combat situation, especially given that you're going to probably be dealing with some terrain cover, this is not too much of a problem. And as you can see, there is space on either side for the silo, and depending on what you want to put there. Now the other element of this is making sure that the rest of the walls are properly aligned so that they conform to the fortress bubble. What I found an effective way of doing this is to use similarly to the placement of the bulwark walls, use some elements of the bulwark wall themselves to place the remaining walls. I'm using a gate wall here as an example, and I'm using the strut of the bulwark wall for alignment purposes. So in one axis I'm using the strut, and in the other I'm just using the intersection of the wall, two wall pieces. You can see how the ghosted image intersects with the placed image, and it gives you a good, indicator of where the wall is going to be built. Again, using this method, it allows you to do something which is reproducible fairly easily, and gives you a very good, even placement of walls, which is, aesthetically pleasing in general, useful for maximizing space, and critically in this example, ensures that your assets are going to be contained within the fortress bubble. It also conveniently allows you to neatly park your ant here in this little space so that it's not in the way. The base design, there is some variance here, so I've done various tests, and I don't have footage of the perfect example yet, but you can see the general concept here. But I've done various tests, and you can accommodate things such as the recon spire and the router spire inside the internal space if you have it done precisely, so you get a little bit of space on either side. As you can see, the alignment here is pretty straightforward using the strut and the wall. This particular wall asset has some issues when you're doing connections with other wall pieces at right angles because of the flange at the bottom, but if you're just doing it directly parallel to the adjacent wall piece, you can do it with a very small gap. Again, you do have a couple different options here. The shorter wall pieces are required in this particular arrangement, though, to give you the containment within the fortress bubble. You need to make sure that it doesn't extend beyond it. Obviously, on the either side of the core here, you're going to have an opening. You're going to need an opening on one side, most certainly, for the silo to be refilled. The other side you could close in, or also leave an opening for connection to a vehicle bay, etc. I'm playing around with closed on one side and open on the other, and I will probably use a sunderer bay for the silo side as opposed to a gate, simply because of the spacing. You could do either. Again, you could adjust it, and your entrance won't be entirely within the fortress wall, but that's not much of a consideration, given that it's a porous to infantry side anyway. If it's a gate or a sunderer bay, the main purpose of this is to give you some protection against vehicle fire. So this generates the basic concept, or rather illustrates the basic concept. I will post further videos in this series soon. I hope this is useful, and thanks as always for watching. Have a good one.